Well, day 3 is officially in the books. Media Row, New Orleans, preparing for Super Bowl 59. What are the NFL insiders saying about the Raiders? You'll hear that on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for Thursday, February 6th, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you. If you're catching us wherever you find your favorite podcast, that's awesome. If you're checking us out on the YouTube page, we definitely appreciate that each and every day as well. My man Ari does a great job behind the scenes, making sure the show looks good, sounds good, takes a lot of pride in his work, and we appreciate it. And Raider Nation, I know you appreciate it as well. You can hit up Ari on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to hit the guy that's been riding shotgun with me side by side all week long, that's Ryan Scott Hogue on Twitter at Ryan Scott Hogue, former NFL wide receiver, former Raider wide receiver as well, Ryan Hogue, who's been doing a fantastic job, not only here on the podcast, but on Radio Row, Media Row, all week long. It's been a lot of fun, and we still have a couple more days, but day 3 is officially in the books. We'll tell you about the whole day, how it kind of went down, the experience that's been going on, because, again, we want to take you behind the scenes and take you to where we get to go and just, you know, have a taste of New Orleans with us. And so that's what we're going to do on today's show. Plus, you'll hear from Solomon Wilcots. You have a really good relationship with Solomon. Really good relationship with Solomon. So there's some really good conversations. Well, we're not going to get the whole conversation because it's about 20 minutes long, but we'll get what he had to say about the Raiders and kind of what the theme of Wednesday's show was, excitement. You'll hear the excitement from Solomon when it comes to the silver and black. And then NFL Insider, ESPN, the NFL Queen, Mina Kimes. We got a chance to catch up with her on Wednesday as well. You'll hear that conversation. Short conversation. We were about to go on the air. We were about to jump on Unnecessary Roughness on Raider Nation Radio 920, and she was about to jump into another episode of her podcast. So we caught her for a good 5 or 6 minutes, so you'll hear that coming up in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. So clearly we got a lot to get to. We're excited about it. We're here in New Orleans. We're actually shutting the place down right now. We are the last of the Mohicans here, and we're okay with that. So we'll jump into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that's PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use lowercase, all code lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. So, Ryan, 3 days officially in the books. We've got Thursday, Friday. Of course, there's some events going on Saturday. And then, well, there's some game that everyone's heard of and knows about and is preparing for Super Bowl 59 that comes up on Sunday. But, man, what was kind of the big takeaway from Wednesday as you starting to see how it evolves from Monday, Tuesday to all of a sudden, boom, kind of hit you in the mouth on Wednesday?
Yeah, so two takeaways for me. Number one, a little more buzz, right? People are starting to show up. You're getting to see a little more fans, some bigger name, right? Jane Daniels, amongst others, showing up today. And then secondly, now the chatter is starting to get onto the game. Right, it's less about doing interviews. It's more about, hey, what do you think about the game? What's going to happen? And that excites me, right? Even though I'm not that invested in the game other than cheering against one of the teams, right? It is exciting to start breaking it down and using analytics and things like that. And we've had some really great guests that know a lot more about football than you and I do, to teach us about some of those analytics and kind of, ping pong back and forth.
Yeah, no, that's been a really fun part of the week so far. And like you said, on Wednesday, it really started to ramp up. And I'll tell you, man, what stood out to me was seeing Josh Jacobs, former Raiders running back. And I was on my way to fill in on Greeny on ESPN Radio, and I happened to be walking from the booth that we're sitting at right now to the ESPN set, which is really cool. If you get a chance, check it out on the ESPN app. And matter of fact, if it's not 9 a.m., well, no, 7 a.m. Yeah, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on the Pacific side, Pacific time, 9 a.m. to 11 Central time. If you have a chance, just check it out. The set is really cool. If you want to see it on Twitter, at your boy Q254, tweeted out some pictures of it. Pretty cool. But I'm walking to it, and I look over to my left, and I see Josh Jacobs. And me and Josh and Raider Nation knows we have a really good relationship going back to 2019 before he was even drafted by the Raiders. So I see him, he sees me, and just a big smile on his face. And for me, that means something. That means that he's not looking at him like, oh, man, here's that dude from Vegas, the guy that covers the Raiders that I used to have to talk to all the time. No, he sees me and, like, that's my dude. Gives me a big, huge hug. And I didn't interview him or nothing, and maybe we'll interview him later on. I know he's going to be back on Thursday and Friday. We might get an interview in with him. But all I tell him is, you had a hell of a season. And he was like, Q, I appreciate that. When he said, Q, I appreciate that, that to me means something that, one, he had a lot of respect for me, but just kind of tells you who he is, too.
Yeah, and NFL is such a brotherhood, right? And I had that same exact feeling when I saw John Randall today, right? Hall of Famer John Randall, who obviously he and I didn't play at the same time with the Vikings, but we're both involved in the Legends community, do a lot of work with Vikings alumni stuff. And he saw me, gave me a big hug, was willing to take, 10 minutes out of his crazy schedule and treat me like
his schedule.
Yeah.
He shifted his schedule for you.
It felt like, I played with him and was one of his boys, right?
Yeah.
Similar to how Josh makes you feel. It's so nice, right? This is like an extended family.
Right.
Because, they're your brothers.
And that's what it's kind of like here when every year when we go. And one, I mean, as a priority, I want to make sure that we have as much coverage that we can for not only the podcast but the radio stations and be a part of everything and give every listener what I feel like they deserve. But it's also, as you've seen, it is a big brotherhood, and you see all the hugs and the, hey, I haven't seen you in a long time. And it almost feels like a large, extended, like family reunion.
It is a big family reunion, and one that the more you come back, the more relationships you build. And it's a testament to who you are as a human, right? I mean, Q, every single person that I've seen you interact with has had a smile on their face and have been so okay with you pulling them out of their situation and taking the time to introduce me to them, right? I mean, and they're like honored, and then they go on and tell me about a story of you guys working together, of course, because you've worked with everybody. But and I like to think that the relationships I've had, although it might be very short stints, like my stint with the Raiders or the Jaguars that were, maybe only a camp, but those teammates still remember, and I feel like it's because I left them with a positive impression similar to how you've left so many.
There's no doubt. No, there's no doubt. And that's part of what we do, right? We're in the relationship building business, right? And I say it all the time, and I try to do it, and I try to, we haven't had any calls or texts all week long, and we will get back to those next week. But even when the call I don't agree with or they say something silly to me that I think is dumb or whatever, and I think they're trying to be disrespectful or whatever, like I don't like it. I'll tell them that I don't like it, but at the same time, I'm not going to come off disrespectful because, again, we're in a relationship building business, right? And one bad review is detrimental, right? Where you can get 1,000 positive reviews and you get one bad one, and like, oh no, that guy treated me like crap. He did this, that, and the other, and that starts to that puts a hit on who you are as a person. And you could tell the people around here that you've interacted with, I've interacted with, even just observing, and that's what we do as well. We observe a lot of different interactions. You could tell the people that are cool and the people that really aren't.
And you can learn a lot from negative comments because, while you might disagree with it, it might be something that from their lens, they're seeing it completely different from you, and you're like, okay, I need to take a step back, really recognize what I'm saying, how it's coming across, and although maybe I don't like your tone, or maybe I just don't like how you said it, at the end of the day, like, thank you for saying that. Thank you for investing time, right? I'm a quality time love language person. Like, thank you for taking your time, and now it's my duty to really assess and then move forward accordingly.
There's no doubt. And I'm telling you, here it gets wild. It's funny. It goes in waves. We get here super early in the morning and we grind all night. Again, we're the last ones here. I mean, it's literally us and the police, right? Like literally, that is all that's here right now. And that's fine. We're good with that. And we don't mind getting up super early and getting here. But you see it comes in waves, right? You'll see everyone roll in where it's like it's breakfast time. They're getting coffees. They're getting Danishes. They're getting donuts. And then all of a sudden you see it going through the midday and you're seeing wings coming in and people getting some food like lunchtime food. And then you see, as the afternoon and some of these shows start getting wrapped up, you start to see it thin out a little bit. But it's a lot of foot traffic. It's almost like keep your head on a swivel. Oh, who's that? Oh, who's that? Oh, there's Josh Jacobs. Oh, there's Justin Jefferson. There's all these different stars and we had to look at the video, but we almost witnessed a fight out here too. It sounds like between James Harrison and Ocho Cinco, who, by the way, Ocho Cinco still has me blocked on Twitter, and I don't know why. But that's okay. Maybe this is not the time to ask him.
I don't. You actually did. You were like, if you're looking for an entry point, ask him why. I see why you're having me do that. You wanted me to take one on the chin for you, man. That's true brotherhood, though. I'd do that for you. Although if we walk on Bourbon Street tonight, that might have to happen, right? I mean, I might have to take one because you never know what's out there.
You never know. But this has been a fun experience, and like I said, man, you've been wrecking it. You've been killing it in a much positive way, and I know Raider Nation has appreciated all your insight, and I feel like that you are even getting more more comfortable with this kind of event? Because normally people are coming up to you and interviewing you, and they're getting their Howard Cosell on, but now you're, hey, can you come over here, give me a few minutes, this and that. So it's a little bit different for you as well.
It is. I've always considered myself very comfortable in front of a camera. I light up when I have a microphone and this and that, but generally speaking, I control where I can navigate where that's going.
Yeah.
When I'm asking questions and interviewing somebody, and that's the unknown, right? Mm-hmm. That's the X variable, and I don't know how they're going to answer it. I'm trying to steer them sometimes a certain direction because then I can riff off of that. But if they go in a completely different direction or say, nothing, that's where I need to become more comfortable, where I'm just because I'm such a perfectionist and I have this all mapped out, beautiful mind, okay, it's going to end up, it's going to be this beautiful thing, and we're going to end, and it's going to be all flowers and rainbows. And I'm like, wait a minute. They are going to the dungeon I'm and plus it's witching hour. We're 13 hours in, and I'm like, did I ask him this question or was that Torrey Smith?
Right.
I don't remember. So it's the survival of the fittest for sure, and also just really good reps though. Absolutely.
And there's no doubt about that. That's what's most important is the reps. And we're gonna get to segment number 2 where we're here from Solomon Wilcots. He'll talk about the Raiders and his excitement for the Raiders. Before we do that though, I have to real quickly. And I don't want to take too long with it, but I have to share this experience that I had on Wednesday that really blew my mind. I'm obviously been working with ESPN Radio for a long time now. Feels like a long time, almost 4 years, and I've gradually continued to climb the tree, go up the ranks and everything, and getting a little bit more recognition. It's been a lot of fun. So there's a new show coming to ESPN Radio that's going to be Joe and Q, Joe Fortenbaugh and myself, and it's probably been announced now for a couple weeks, so it's not like it's some brand new breaking news or anything, but on Wednesday, ESPN actually presented me to multiple different radio stations. And so what normally we're doing, where we're chasing people around asking for interviews, they put it out there hey, if you want to have Q Myers at your table for 15 minutes, just hit up this guy and he'll schedule it. So they did. So for a whole hour, matter of fact, hour and 15 minutes on Wednesday, they had me just doing interviews and running from table to table. So instead of getting the interviews, I was getting interviewed. So I was playing the role that you're used to having. So I've never had this before. It's funny because my very first Super Bowl was here in New Orleans, and all of a sudden, all these years later, and that was the Harbaugh Bowl. That was John and Jim, 49ers, and the Ravens. Beyonce shut it down at halftime when she made the power go out, all that good stuff. Well, we're back in New Orleans, and all of a sudden now I have a handler is what they call it, right? In air quotes, a handler. And we go to sit down at the very first interview I was doing, and I just thought I was sitting down. They were going to talk. We were going to talk about the new show coming to ESPN Radio, and of course Super Bowl and probably Raiders because that's what everyone talks to me about, which is fine. And all of a sudden, my man opens up a folder, and he pulls out a one sheet where it says my name at the top. It says the show coming, has my picture. It's not a great picture. It's a selfie, not a bathroom selfie picture, but it's a picture. I'll show it to you right there if you're watching on YouTube. Boom, there it is. So I'm going to actually hold on to this picture and frame it. So I lost my mind. So for the first 5 minutes, I wasn't even doing an interview. I was like, I have a one sheet. They have a one sheet on me. Like when you sit down, and that's what happens on Radio Row, no matter who you get, if they have a handler, they're usually pimping something out. They're usually some product. Maybe it's something that has to do with something medical. Maybe it's just some kind of restaurant, or they're working on something. They have a comedy show, something. And they always say, hey, make sure you ask about this. Make sure you, and so they give us the information. So I have so many papers from so many different people. Now your boy has a one sheet. And so this is going home with me. This is
as it should.
As it should. This is
And when you say you lost your mind, I was right there following him, and he it was like a kid in a candy store. It was really fun to see. And I think 10 years from now, when you're putting your Stuart Scott type impression on others, right? You look back and somebody asks you, it's going to be a little kid like we interviewed or like you interviewed yesterday, and they say, when was your aha moment?
Yeah.
You're going to point to today.
Yeah.
And you're going to say, this is the aha moment, like when I really started to recognize, I'm on the way to doing something special, or I already have gotten there. Right. And obviously you're not done, but I really believe that today is the day that you're going to look back and be like, that was the day. That was the monumental shift for me.
It happened on February 5th, 2025. 2-5 and 2-5. Oh, there you go. We're on to something, Raider Nation. We're on to something. We are on to something. We're on to segment number 2. You'll hear from Solomon Wilcots, longtime NFL defensive back. He's works with SiriusXM Radio, does a fantastic job. And we had a good, long conversation with him, but we'll let you hear the Raiders part of the conversation because, well, I mean, that's what we're here for on the Locked On Raiders podcast. We'll do that coming up in segment number 2. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about one of the great sponsors here, and that is FanDuel. We know Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. There's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. What do you have to do to make this happen? Well, it's simple. Download the app, head to FanDuel.com to get started. All you got to do is bet $5. I even have that in my wallet. $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets just like that. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, the official partner of Super Bowl 59. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. We are ready to, well, let you hear the conversation that we had with Solomon Wilcots, and we actually recorded this. When we record this on Tuesday, I believe. All these days start to run together for me, but I think we did record it on Tuesday, and then we played it on Wednesday on the radio, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's how it went down. So, okay, and now we're on to Thursday. So just rock with us, Raider Nation. Rock with us. These days we start to get delirious. I mean, these are 18, 19-hour days and then some. So when the days start running together, don't even worry about it. But you have a really good relationship with Solomon, and really you had the opportunity. What was kind of like the relationship with before we get into the conversation?
Well, number one, he's somebody I've always looked up to because, and I even mentioned it in the interview, is that his trajectory, right, football player to football analyst, and then to being covering multiple sports, similar to Ahmad Rashad. I mean, Ahmad Rashad was one of the best when it came to NBA and his relationship with the Bulls and things like that. And obviously growing up a Bulls fan, and then also he was a former Minnesota Viking, 1991 team, and that was right in the heart. Like, I was in middle school, I was a diehard Viking fan, didn't miss a game. And like my first ever autograph I ever received was from another guy in the secondary, Carl Lee, that he played with, and so I knew about every single player he mentioned. I knew, and so it was great to riff back and forth, and then obviously he had a great relationship and talks about John Randall, who I know, and who's a legend, obviously, and Hall of Famer. So
it was fun. Before we even started talking with Solomon, it was cool. I was setting up whatever we were doing for the radio station. I was setting something up and getting prepared, and Ryan and Saul are up there talking. That's all they're doing. They're up there talking about the teams and the players and how this team didn't achieve what they should have achieved and how they had so much talent. And literally they're having a great, fantastic. It's one of those where you wish that there was a camera rolling or there's some microphones rolling at that time, because that was such a great back and forth. And that's been part of the fun for me here on Radio Row, watching you interact with people that you know either directly because you played with them, or you know somebody who knows them, or you knew some, whatever, you were in a camp with them, whatever the case may be. But seeing your interaction and just being able to, hear the genuine back and forth, like player to player, player to coach, whatever type conversation, has been really a treat for me. So again, as many times as I've been here and done this, it never gets old, because I'm always learning something new. So I've been learning these interactions that you've been having. So it's a lot of fun, and I definitely can appreciate that. So
what people fail to recognize is that as athletes, we were fans before we were athletes, right? So I grew up as big a fan as you, in all the sports. So he's talking to me about my hometown team, 91 Vikings. Like, yes, I know every single player. I know the coach. I coached his coach's grandson in tennis in Minnesota. So all these 6 degrees of separation. And between the two of us, I mean, I think we cover almost every single category, sport, everything. We know somebody who knows somebody at each table.
Absolutely. So this is the deal. So the conversation was probably about 20 minutes long. So obviously we're not going to play the whole thing, but we did get into a conversation about the Raiders, and I mentioned it on Wednesday's show that there's some genuine excitement, and it's not just from one person or two people. It's genuinely all across the board here at the Convention Center on Media Row, preparing for Super Bowl 59, and really that's where we started when it comes to the conversation with Solomon Wilcots was, well, his thoughts on the Raiders and the moves that they've been making. Well, covering the NFL is not a bad thing. As you mentioned, it's all year long. I mean, that's why we're here on Media Row now. Again, like I said, it used to be Radio Row. Now it's all these different media outlets are here. Yeah. But, we're here in Las Vegas. Locally, we're in Vegas, and you've seen what's going on with the Raiders. You've seen the change. Tom Brady has a thumbprint on the team. Yeah. Pete Carroll's the head coach. Yeah. Chip Kelly's now the OC. What have you thought of just about the changes that have been going on with the Raiders?
I'm excited for the Raiders. I haven't been this excited for the Raiders in a very, very long time. I mean, very long time. Yeah. Because Al Davis was great. He would call people fraud. He's a fraud. It's like, and I got to know Al. I was fortunate enough to get to know him. They were still in Oakland, even when they were in L.A., and the guy was great. He knew this game. Mm-hmm. I think he'd be proud of this hire. Yeah. I really do. I think he'd be proud that it's intentional in terms of building a culture. It's intentional of building a roster, having some leadership and sustainability, right? Not just these one-offs, right? It's not about emotion as much as it is about this is smart hire because we know Pete can build it.
Yeah, right.
Pete's built everywhere he's been, and he makes it fun for the people to come to work every single day. Yeah. How about that?
Right,
That's a rare thought
That's
today.
Very rare. That's very rare. There's no doubt. Solomon Wilcots here. Dr. Nelson Mead is with us, and, of course, former Raider wide receiver Ryan Hogue, who's been holding it down here on Radio Row with us all week long.
Yeah. Yes, I have. And Solomon and I talked before we went on air, former Minnesota Viking, fellow Minnesota Viking, and part of the 1991 team, and we were going through the roster. Q, I'm sure you couldn't name one player, but let me tell you, that team was loaded.
Yeah.
Herschel Walker.
I heard some of the side conversations.
Man, it was such a talented team, and they only went 8-8. I'm still heartbroken to this day.
Every time I think about it, I was like, that was Chris Carter, Anthony Carter.
Yeah.
I mean, Chris would even tell you AC was a bad dude. Mm-hmm. The one-hand stab that Randy Moss even perfected? Yeah. He got it from Chris. Chris got it from AC.
Right.
AC had this thing. He holds you off here. The last minute, bam, he stick it out.
Yeah.
I remember, so we had a defensive line that had Keith Millard, who was former Defensive Player of the Year. You had Chris Doman. Keith Millard, Chris Doman. You had Al Noga. Okay. You had Henry Thomas. And then I remember we was just kind of huddled up, having fun one time. And then Anthony Carter comes over and say, "You see that guy over there?" And we had this guy. He used to always be over there shadow boxing. And he said, "He's going to be better than all you guys."
John Randall.
That's what Anthony Carter. He was talking about John Randall.
Wow.
Who was not even a starter.
Yeah.
The guy goes on to be a Hall of Famer.
Right. Wow.
We called him Little Muscle. The offensive line had 2-3 Hall of Famers on it. Defensive line had 2 Hall of Famers on it, and John Randall and Chris Doman, right?
Right.
You had guys like Mike Merriweather and at linebacker, some really good players, obviously, in the secondary, Joey Browner. It was a great team.
They just
Herschel Walker was on that team. I mean, it was loaded.
Yeah.
And we would beat, like, Denver Broncos. I remember John Elway, they came down. We beat them. San Francisco, Steve Young was the quarterback. And Steve Young was bad, dude.
Yeah.
We beat them, and it was easy. Like, we lose to Tampa.
that was.
You know what I'm saying, man?
Right. That was the pewter days of Tampa.
What are we doing?
It's funny, man. It's kind of taking it back to, honestly, the Raiders. I mean, they beat some teams like they beat in week 2. They beat the Ravens. Then it's like, they're going to beat Carolina week 3 at home. It's the season home opener.
No.
Stomp.
Yeah.
Give up 40.
First drive. Remember the first drive? You were sitting right next to me. First drive. We're like, what in the hell just happened?
Yeah.
Well, you got the baddest dude at tight end I've ever seen.
Yeah, Brock Bowers.
Bad dude.
Yeah, he's a monster.
We loved him coming out. I wanted the Bengals to somehow, it's like, if you're going to lose T. Higgins, you should move up and get Brock Bowers. You guys didn't even want him. You wanted Michael Penix Jr. and you know it, right?
Jaden Daniels was option 1.
He was.
That wasn't obtainable, right?
He was an Arizona State guy, obviously.
Exactly.
But there's no doubt he wasn't making it, right?
No.
But, man, when you guys took Brock Bowers, you didn't get your quarterback.
Right.
But, man, you got a player right there. That dude, he is special.
Right.
I mean, he really is a special young man. You love watching him play. He's the real deal. I don't ever dub any rookie like future Hall of Famer, but if there ever was one, he'd be it.
So with that being said, the Raiders, I still don't think have their quarterback, right? Didn't go get one in the draft. They have a couple guys on the roster, but they're just a couple guys on the roster.
Placeholders.
What do you do? What direction do you go?
I think I would love. To me, when we talk about quarterbacks, it's not about when you go; it's about where you go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
right. That's a great point. You said that the other day.
It's about where you go.
Yeah.
You want to be planted in the right garden, tended to by the right people. Pete is going to make sure that there's going to be some patience here. You're going to have an opportunity to grow. And I think Tom, his relationship with Shedeur, I think that plays well here. Because I think they're not going to force him to play right now because I don't think he's ready to play right now. I think he's going to have to grow into that role. There's some things progressionary-wise that he can do a better job at getting the ball out and reading the coverages. Tom, obviously, going to help with that. There's going to be people in the building that can help him get there. Mm-hmm. Tom has the work ethic. I think he's going to be frank with him. I think they've already had conversations. You know that. Yeah. I think Shedeur has gotten to this point in his game and has matured and evolved to this point because of Tom. Mm-hmm. So just think about if this process continues. I would rather see that continue with the Las Vegas Raiders.
Right.
In fact, I can almost bet it will continue if he goes there as opposed to if he went anywhere else.
That makes sense.
Do you think he'll be there at 6, though, or the Raiders have to move up?
I think they may have to move up. I think a lot of other people are starting to get – here's the thing. If you're the Titans and you get a win that Tom Brady likes Shedeur, you know.
Right.
Or well, maybe we should too.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to get.
Yeah,
I mean, he's the GOAT.
Yeah.
If the GOAT likes you, everyone else kind of
might want to reevaluate. Wait, what am I missing here?
There you go.
Yeah.
So you think he's just going to fall in your lap, man. If you love him, you better go get him. That's all. That's really all I got to say. It's
kind of what we've been saying, the same thing, right? Just at some point, if you really, really think he's your guy, you got to go get your guy. No one's going to complain about getting your guy if you got him.
And I think the Titans might be bluffing, too, because they want somebody to – they would love to trade out of that pick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, but
more valuable.
But to get your guy, you may have to do that. You may have to help them trade out of that pick.
Right.
If they're looking to do it, help them out.
Again, just portion of the conversation that we had with Solomon Wilcots right there. Sirius XM Radio, you can find him. Longtime NFL defensive back. Does great work, like I said, on the radio. Does a really good job covering all sports. Fantastic. But, I just thought that he had some really good thoughts on the Raiders, and you heard what he's had to say about the quarterback, where he feels pretty strongly that he thinks Shedeur Sanders is going to be a Raider.
And it is interesting having all these conversations because it is a very polarizing topic when it comes to the Raider quarterback situation and the NFL draft.
Isn't that what everybody says first? First and foremost, whenever you start talking about the Raiders, like, well, who's your quarterback?
Yeah, and they usually follow that up with, well, if they can fall, if one of the top 2 quarterbacks falls to number 6, I don't know if it's going to happen. It's for sure not going to be Cam Ward. Almost every single person has said Cam Ward's going to go 1, and then it's a matter of if a team loves Shedeur or if the Raiders are willing to move up because they're unsure if he's going to move or stay there at 6. Right. So, that's why football has become a 365 day a year kind of thing. Right, because there's always a storyline. There's always something to talk about, and there's a lot to be figured out between now and late April?
Yeah, April 25th, around April 25th.
Like
yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, be in Green Bay for the next draft, and they're not going to be there. And who I mean by them is the Colorado guys, right? Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. They're supposed to be staying in Colorado and having their draft night with their former Colorado teammates. So that's an interesting element to it because normally I go to the drafts and I would go with the expectations of, hey, the Raiders' first pick is going to be in the green room, but it doesn't sound like, especially if they have a chance to get Shedeur, that he's not going to be there. Now, Shedeur and Travis Hunter are going to be here. That's what I've learned. They're going to be here Thursday and Friday. I don't know when. I don't know what day exactly. I know there's only 2 days left. So I'm going to do everything I can to try to find a way to get that conversation with Shedeur and Travis Hunter. I'd love to hear from both of those guys. So that's going to be our goal that we have. But I thought that was some really good stuff from Solomon Wilcots. And on top of that, as he said, if that's your guy, and you have to go get him, then you have to go get him, right? And he even talked about Tennessee trading out to number 1. Maybe you have to go all the way up to number 1 to get your guy. If he's your guy and you believe he's your guy, go get him. If he's your guy and you go get him and he's not your guy, well, then you could probably say that you're not going to have your job. But that's GMs know that when they go in. So that's something that John Spytek's going to have to figure out and decide if that's what he wants to do, if he wants to be married and attached at the hip to a Shedeur Sanders, a Cam Ward, or other. You're always going to be married to the quarterback, especially one you take in the first round. If you get him in the third, fourth, fifth round, okay, fine, right? You can whiff. But the first round,
you're attached to the hip.
You're attached.
But that's why we gave him a 5-year contract and millions of dollars for him to figure that out.
For him to figure that out.
We're supposed to speculate. He can figure it out.
And we will do that, and we'll continue to talk about it. We'll continue to break it down. Matter of fact, Mina Kimes from ESPN does a fantastic job. See her on TV all the time. Got a chance to catch up with her as well. You'll hear that short conversation next, coming up in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about another great sponsor here, and that is Betterhelp. This show is sponsored by Betterhelp. What do you want your 2025 story to be? Every January brings a new chapter. 365 blank pages waiting for you to fill. If there's a part of your life you want to rewrite or a plot twist you've been craving, why wait? Life isn't about fleeting resolutions. It's about taking control and becoming the author of your own story. And we're already into February now, so even if you have a resolution, it already might be over. But that's all right. Don't worry about it. Think of therapy as your personal editor, helping you craft your life as you deserve. It's not just for crisis situations. Therapy can help you develop healthier coping strategies, improve your relationships, and empower you to be the best version of yourself. Whether you're facing a challenge or just looking for personal growth, therapy is a powerful tool to help guide your journey. Whether it's learning how to set boundaries, tackling stress in new ways, therapy can help you develop skills for a better tomorrow. Even if you've never tried therapy, the benefits are clear. Finding someone to talk to and gaining fresh perspectives can make all the difference in how you navigate life's ups and downs. Right now, you can write your story with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNFL today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. Here we go, Raider Nation, segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. About to close things out, hearing from Mina Kimes. Obviously, she's very familiar with Pete Carroll. She's a Seattle Seahawks fan. She says it all the time. And so I thought it was really cool to be able to catch up with her and talk a little Pete Carroll, especially because she's so familiar with his time in Seattle.
And, she's had kind of a rise similar to yours, where, a couple years ago you maybe heard the name once a month, and now she's everywhere. And it's really impressive. Actually, I had a moment like a year ago where I responded to one of her segments on Twitter, and she hearted it. And I was like, I felt so vindicated. She didn't call me. She didn't say I was glowing.
Right.
But,
that happened, though. Raider Nation, that happened. Cynthia Freeland, our good friend from NFL Network, actually said he was glowing.
Today.
Yeah, that happened.
So Mina didn't quite go that far, but she did heart my tweet, and so I felt, important.
Hey, look, you are important. When someone actually loves or likes or retweets your tweet and doesn't fire back with venom, you're winning, man.
or get blocked.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm a pretty good dude. I think I'm a pretty nice dude, but I get blocked on Twitter. I get, folks to get mad because I said certain things on the radio, but it happens, man. You can't do that. But that's cool. No, Mina Kimes is great people.
She's phenomenal, and she keeps getting better and better.
And the cool thing about it is our guy, Jared, he actually is the one who went and grabbed her and got her attention real quick. And I told him, if you see Mina Kimes, I'd like to introduce myself and try to get a few minutes with her because I knew about the Pete Carroll, and I wanted to get her thoughts on the Raiders, John Spytek, and you'll hear that in a hot minute. And the first thing Jared does is go, hey, my boss is Q Myers, and he's starting this new show on ESPN. He's the Joe and Q, and I'm telling you, if you want to talk about it, and Jared, Jared be doing Jared things at times, right? So you can never really count on exactly what he's going to say, but if there's one thing that he really listened to, what I say, man, get out the meat right then and there. Whatever it is that you really need to say, you want to say, whatever's going to be the attention getter, do it. He
pulled out the one-pager?
He said he basically did without the one sheet. He was like, hey, he's got a new show on ESPN Radio with Joe Fortenbaugh. And I mean, he started, and she's like, oh, really? And so and I had never met her, right, except for at another radio row where I asked her if she can come on the show, and she didn't have time. And so she was like, oh. And so I introduced myself, walked up, introduced myself, and I said, yeah, if you have some time the rest of this week, it'd be great to, catch up to you for a few minutes. And she's like, got about 10 or 15 minutes before my next show. If you're ready, we can do it right now. And I'm like, done. Just like that. But it was cool, and he threw it out there that I'm starting on ESPN Radio, and obviously she works for ESPN, so there's a good chance that we'll have some interactions outside of the convention center and media row. But it was really cool that he was able to do that, and it was also really cool that she gave us some time. And it wasn't a long time, and that's fine. I'll only need a few minutes. But here is that quick conversation with ESPN's Mina Kimes. We are here in Las Vegas, right? We're covering the Raiders, and so a guy you're very familiar with is now the head coach, and Pete Carroll. What are your thoughts of Pete Carroll, 73 years young, now the head coach of the Raiders?
I like that hire a lot. I'm always nervous when I get asked about coaching hires because you never know who's going to be good, right?
Right.
But I do think with Pete, there's a couple of things that make you feel good about it. One of which is, the biggest question you always have with a first-time head coach is, can he lead? Can he establish culture? Can he build an organization? Can he be a CEO? We already know Pete Carroll can do all those things. It's obviously very needed in Vegas. But in terms of being beloved by players, respected by people around the NFL, running a great, he's already proven in that respect. He also has proven that he could shepherd a young quarterback. Russell Wilson could be a direction that the Raiders are going in this year. Finally, the man is defensively, one of the most important coaches of his generation.
Right.
And I love that he kept Patrick Graham. I thought that was very cool. And I think that their marriage of philosophies is going to be really interesting to see how that plays out in Vegas.
What do you think about Chip Kelly? When I think about Pete Carroll, I don't think about the Chip Kelly offense, but what do you think about the Chip Kelly hire that I think Raider Nation's excited about?
I will say this. When I think Pete Carroll, he's always placed an emphasis on ball security and running the ball. Chip Kelly today is not the same Chip Kelly that we saw in the NFL, that high-flying offense that kind of, got stopped. He has become excellent, I think. What he's done the last 2 years in college in the run game has been phenomenal, and I have to think that really appealed to Pete, something obviously that the Raiders need to get better at. So I'm excited because he's just so inventive when it comes to running the football, very good at using misdirection, motion to make life easier for the offense, for the quarterback. I think, again, if they go in the direction of having a young quarterback, the fact that he's worked with college quarterbacks for the last couple of years is interesting, too. So I like the hire.
Mina Kimes is with us here on Raider Nation Radio 920. What do you think about a quarterback that could run the offense, someone that Pete Carroll can lean on? You mentioned Russell Wilson earlier, maybe even as a bridge guy.
Yeah, I think you're probably going to do a combo bridge guy rookie.
Right.
I have not studied the draft prospects, so I'm not sure I have a pick for the Raiders. You hear names thrown out, Sanders.
There's only
Cam
two at the
Ward.
top, right, that we're really talking about at this stage?
True.
Yeah.
But I haven't really dug into it, so I don't have a preference. But I do think you're going to hear names also like Sam Darnold and Russ, obviously. And, the devil's in the details for me. I think if you bring in someone and it's not a long-term commitment, it makes sense. I would get a little bit nervous about doing a longer commitment, though.
What do you just think about the way that the Raiders are trying to build this now? We're seeing the Tom Brady thumbprint put on this team. They hired John Spytek as the GM now,
who's very well regarded around the NFL. It seems like things are going in the right direction. I think you talk about Chip Kelly. The fact that he got paid as much as he did was pretty interesting, and I think very telling because maybe the Raiders haven't been the biggest spenders in the past, and the fact that they were willing to shell that out for Chip Kelly, that told me that, I don't know if it's the Brady influence or whatever, but they want to win, they want to turn things around, and they're pretty committed to it.
How did you think that was going to go when Tom Brady, bought into as minority owner, and now we're seeing kind of the results, even the fact that they got an interview with Ben Johnson?
I think it's a good thing. The thing about Brady, and I'm not really breaking new ground saying this, he is a maniacal competitor. And I think he is applying that already in Vegas, that pressure. And I think his connections, obviously him being who he is, it can't hurt the team.
I don't think so, right? And we, like I said, we're starting to see the results of it, at least what we think is the results of it, starting to see the team move in a positive direction. Again, Mina Kimes is with us here on Raider Nation Radio 920. Before we get you out of here, we're here for Super Bowl 59. It's funny, all week long we'll go and we'll talk about anything but the game, and then all of a sudden we'll talk about the game. Kind of what's the gut feeling? It's midweek. What's the gut feeling on how these things could go, either the Eagles or the Chiefs?
I think I have a slight Chiefs lead, but and there's, I don't really need to spell out. It's not any surprise why. It's 15. And then I think what I've seen from the Chiefs offense over the last 2 months or so is probably why I feel comfortable. I think that offense has evolved and it's become ultra efficient, really good at attacking different coverages. But I do think if Jalen Hurts plays like he did the last week, or like he did, frankly, in the Super Bowl, the Eagles will win. So it really comes down to their quarterback, because they are the more talented football team, top to bottom.
That's what I've been saying, that I feel like they're the more talented team, but they just can't make mistakes.
Yeah.
And can't fall behind early. If they fall behind early, it's going to be a lot of heavy lifting to try to get back in the game. Well, I know you got a lot going on here. You've got the podcast, ESPN, everything. What do you got cooking?
Yeah, if you're listening to this, you're a Raiders fan. We're going to talk about the Raiders a lot this offseason. We're going to talk about the draft a lot on the Mina Kimes Show featuring Lenny, so check that out. We're on YouTube. I do mock drafts constantly. See what we got going on for the Raiders. It's going to be a fun offseason for y'all. But NFL Live Thursday and Friday. We're taping from the French Quarter, I think.
Nice.
So tune in.
It's going to be a lot of fun. We definitely appreciate you. Thanks so much, Mina.
Thanks for having me. Congrats.
There it is. There was right there, Mina Kimes. A few good minutes with her, and it just kind of, again, go back to the excitement level, the thought that people believe that the Raiders are doing things the right way. And, again, as you heard from Solomon Wilcots in segment number 2, Mina Kimes, and others, that Thomas Dimitroff on yesterday's show, like, people believe in the strategy that the Raiders are putting together. Now, again, they've got to go out there and execute it. It's not, you don't just win because you put a good plan together, but people are seeing the vision of Brady, of Mark Davis, of John Spytek, of Pete Carroll. They could see how it could all come together.
Mina echoes what everybody has in saying that nobody really has had a problem with the Pete Carroll hire. Right?
Yep.
Now, some people, like especially you and I early on, especially when Vinny kind of teased us with it,
we
were
like, okay, whatever.
It's a guy.
Right.
I start to understand the vision now.
Yeah.
I get it. And again, do I believe that Pete Carroll is going to be a Super Bowl winning coach with the Raiders? That it's maybe a stretch for me.
Right, you got to prove it.
But do I believe that he can build it so it's the infrastructure is in place to be a consistent winning team and a playoff team? Absolutely.
Yeah, there's no doubt. You got to build it. You got to have a strong foundation. You got to have that strong culture, that winning culture, where coaches are going to want to go there, players are going to want to go there, right? They're going to believe in the organization. As we're learning, more and more people did not believe in the Raiders, even though a lot of us, including myself, were like, they got a chance to do this, that, and the third. We talked to Ian Rappaport on Wednesday, and he was like, the worst thing that could happen to the Raiders is when they traded for Davante Adams. And I thought that was great.
That was such a brilliant take, and I had never thought about that. But, he said that the worst thing, because then it got in people's heads that we were all in, like you had said.
Yep.
And now our mindset was not, hey, let's just enjoy the season, see where it goes. Now it's playoffs, or it was
just came off the playoff run, right? And even Ian said that, and maybe we'll get some of that conversation for tomorrow's show. But, even he said they probably overachieved with Rich Bisaccia. Then you go out and make a move for Davante Adams, and everyone's thinking – playoffs or bust. You've got to get to the playoffs, right? And so then when they have the season that they did, it's a disappointment. And, why would you trade for a rebuild? And that's why I kept saying, I was like, it's not a rebuild. Why would you trade draft capital for a rebuild? Like, if you're trying to rebuild the team, you have to actually keep your draft capital. That's how you do it. But, so that was a great point. But people are seeing the vision, understanding the vision, and believing this team has a chance to make something happen. Again, it's not going to happen overnight, but they believe that there's a chance that they can do something. They just got to put it together. And again, it's the theme we've had all week long. They've got to get the right pieces, and Raider Nation is going to have to practice a little bit of patience. That's going to do it for today's show. I'm excited about Thursday on Greeny on ESPN Radio. Again, that's 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Pacific time, and 9 a.m. to 11 where we're at in the Central time zone. Max Crosby's going to be on the show, and I'm not 100% sure exactly what time he's going to be on the show, but we're going to have him on for probably a good 15 or 20 minutes, whenever it is. It's either going to be, it's either the first hour or the second hour, right? It's only a 2-hour show, so it's not a whole lot. But, I'm excited about that, right? Because I know that he's obviously really good at talking. He's got his podcast. He's got a future in media whenever he wants it. He's got that down. So I'm assuming that this is going to be a good, fun conversation, and really I'll be one of the few that cover the Raiders on the regular that have a chance to sit down and talk with them ever since Pete Carroll's been hired, because they haven't made him available. They haven't made anyone available because it's the offseason. So I think there'll be a really good conversation. So whatever we get from that will definitely bring to the podcast tomorrow. And who knows? We have some surprises. I think Josh Jacobs, like I said, is going to be here, and we're going to try to catch up with him. And I know he's not a Raider right now, but Josh is always going to be my guy. So if I get an opportunity to catch up with him, we'll definitely do that and bring it to the show as well. So Raider Nation, we continue to truck through this week that is called Super Week. It's Media Row, Radio Row, leading up to Super Bowl 59, and we're going to bring you everything that we can here on the show. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.